Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Ethereum Hot Takes number 4, where today we have our special guest, Joe Bernitt, the amazing Joe. Um, we're going to go over a couple of topics today. We're going to do the latest news and oracles, and then we're going to do some technical discussion around meta transactions, how that affects users, a little bit like what that may look like for use cases, and then see where the conversation goes from there. As usual, Kames back in action. I should mention it, still not with consensus. And then feel free to introduce yourself, guys.
I'll go next. Again, I am still Billy, and I am still with consensus. And I will pass it off to Mr. Joe Bernitt.
Yeah, I'm Joe, and I'm not with consensus. And I'm just chilling.
Yeah, and I guess just to preface this a little bit, Joe was also a member of mine and Kames' previous two teams, which are the Consensus Developer Relations team and the Rapid team. And so, yeah, Joe will probably be a much more regular face that you'll be seeing on these things. Not just a one-off. Don't get any hope, because he's busy mountain biking right now and living his life, his non-consensus life. But you should see him on here sometimes. Hopefully, we hope. I'm saying that to
There's a whole
Put us in the
world.
right direction.
an obligation, yeah. Cool. So on the topic of, sorry, Kames, it looked like you're about to.
I was just gonna say, let's dive right into it.
Let's do it. So on the topic of oracles, do you want to quickly kind of just set the stage with what oracles are and the purpose of them for people who might not be familiar?
Totally, I can absolutely do that. So oracles are the ability, and this is before we get into like price oracles. These are just like oracles in general. So the idea behind it is the blockchain doesn't have information from the outside world. And like a basic example of that is like who won the basketball game last week for the NBA championships or something, right? You need some way to get that information on chain. And there's a couple of ways to do it. One way to do it is from one trusted source. Maybe that's like the NBA. They sign a piece of data and put that on chain. And then all these other dApps can read that, knowing that information is valid because it came from a trusted source. And so now if we transition that into prices for the dollar, prices for Bitcoin, prices for Ethereum, you need these trusted sources to put that data on chain so decentralized applications can interact with it. So at a high level, that's kind of like how an oracle works. If I missed something, feel free to jump in, guys. But
No, that was great. Yeah. And I guess just one example of why you need data from the outside world. I mean, it's probably pretty self-explanatory based on like Kames' description, but let's say you have an insurance smart contract, and that insurance smart contract says, hey, if my house burns down, I get paid X amount of ETH. Well, the house burning down is something that doesn't live on the blockchain. It lives in the real world. And you need something that tells the smart contract that this event happened in the real world. And so now like this condition might be true. And so I should execute like this specific piece of functionality. So getting external real world data onto like on chain is extremely important. And I think the first kind of real use case where we've been seeing oracles used in a bunch of different ways and used like pretty heavily is in the world of DeFi. And yeah, before we kind of move into that space, is there, Joe or James, anything else that you guys wanted to add to that?
no, I mean, honestly, I think I summarized it. I think, you said kind of like is DeFi. I would say that is like the main reason right now for oracles is DeFi. I don't see a lot of other use cases yet for these oracles. Like Augur has not quite taken off yet, like these other betting mechanisms. So yeah, I would just say the lion's share is DeFi. That is the use case at the moment.
And are there, I guess, besides these prediction markets, which we should probably discuss a little bit when we talk about the different types of oracles. besides those, are there any mainstream non-price feed oracles, or oracles that don't focus on kind of just like price feed related data? Or are most mainstream oracles right now focused on price feed data, and that's why DeFi is the main kind of adopter and user of oracles right now?
I haven't looked at prediction markets like Augur in a while, but I imagine that the outcomes of those are fed by oracles, or like a trusted oracle. I don't know if either of you guys know more, but that's one outside of DeFi use case that I see oracles being used in.
Yep. And I guess, like, just while we're on this topic of trusted source, we should also just explain a little bit about like what the opposite of that is. So we've name dropped like Augur already, and there's Gnosis has a prediction market. And for example, if you don't have a trusted source, what you do is you curate information from a ton of people, and you have this voting mechanism where it's like maybe 1,000 people come and say this is what happened, and 970 of those say this event occurred this way, and only 30 say it occurred the other way. And so if you don't have a trusted source, you can use, like, I guess what you call it, the wisdom of the crowds. And so just while we talk about this, there are those two different kind of fundamental differences in protocol approaches.
Yeah, and that approach and the approach of using a prediction market as an oracle was the first way that I personally got introduced to the concept of oracles. Like these things like Augur and originally Gnosis, they were prediction markets established so that we could kind of get decentralized, reliable, I guess, feeds of activities from the external world. And so a prediction market is basically a betting market. It's like, you know, what are the chances that Trump is going to be elected president? And then there's this whole market around that. Everyone bets on the outcome, like based on the bets that are made, you can predict how likely that event is going to be. And so the idea kind of is people will be incentivized to go and gather data about this specific event and try to make they're monetarily incentivized to make accurate predictions with respect to what those events are going to be. And so you have this market where everyone is like competing with respect to data to kind of predict the outcome of the event. And in the end, like the resolution mechanism, I guess, I think in Augur, and I haven't looked into Augur in a long time either, but like my previous conception of that was like there's like the market basically decides what the truth of that outcome is, or like there's an arbiter. Do either of you guys know what the resolution of those markets is?
So the resolution is a voting mechanism, but then you can cast, like you said, an arbiter. You can, I forget the word they use, but essentially say this needs to go a vote again, and then you need to stake a bunch of rep, which is Augur tokens, and then it re-goes to vote. And the price of doing that goes up and up and up. But like every time something can be doubted, and you begin that process again. So there's no like one arbiter, but you can continue to say this is not true and pay if you actually think it's not true.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, prediction market, one type of oracle. Haven't really seen the proliferation of those used yet. So we haven't seen the use of the results of Augur in really any dApps yet. But what we have seen is the use of like other oracles like Chainlink, which feed in the price feeds of different crypto assets and the price feeds, I guess, of just like traditional fiat assets on chain, so that like this is basically what's powering most of DeFi. I don't really know of any. Maybe there are some DeFi use cases that don't rely on a price feed oracle, but I feel like almost every single one does. So do we want to dive into a little bit of the options around what some of those price feed oracles are?
Yeah, totally. Because I think there's definitely, like you mentioned, there's Chainlink right now, which is like the lion's share of price oracles, and that comes off chain to on chain. And we want to get into the news of the most recent one, which is Coinbase. They're coming to the mix. But I think what's important to kind of mention also is that in Uniswap version 2, they're going to allow to have a price oracle on chain. And so you just use Uniswap version 2 as your price oracle without needing this trusted source to come on. So when we dive in, we should also distinguish their, not only is there like these prediction markets, but then there's also using a dApp to become its own price oracle if they have enough liquidity as well. So we could dive in probably into either of those.
That's super. I would love to dive deeper into that. Like, do you have any more kind of technical details around the plans for that?
I can pull those up, or if Joe wants to look them up, kind of we'll just talk about it. But I know, like, basically it was not as easy version 2, but then how they're making version 2, because you can do token to token sets, you can do a lot more like dynamic trading, that the ability to have that be an on-chain oracle is much more doable. But we could definitely take a little bit of time to kind of dig into what that's going to look like.
Cool. And are either of you guys super familiar with Chainlink and how that whole, I'll call it a protocol, works?
At a super high level, I kind of understand what they're doing and what the mechanism is, and they use multiple nodes to feed into like another one, and then that signs data and puts it on, but not as much. Are you familiar with them? Because I know you mentioned the Chainlink Marines last week, so it sounds like you're somewhat familiar.
Yeah, no, I would feel bad trying to go deep into Chainlink because I am not too well versed on it. But I know some people who are, and we could probably bring them into another podcast if we want to dive deeper on Chainlink. But yeah, high level concept in my mind is you generally just have, I guess, let's say the thing you're trying to get at is a price feed for Ether. You basically have like providers of that API, and the providers of that API get rewarded for providing that data. And then you have like multiple sources who are providing APIs for that same piece of data. So it's like a market of different people providing the same pieces of data, and you get rewarded for providing that data. And then like the ultimate, I guess, single price that gets determined is, and this is where I am just like not well studied, but I don't know, like it is derived from the pool of those sources, which I don't know what that derivation mechanism is, but that would be interesting to look at.
Yep. I'm sure it's some median, because the prices probably don't deviate too much, and so they just find the median of all of them, or maybe like weight of the few that are closer together. But yeah, we should totally save that for like when we have either study up or bring somebody on. But I think probably what we should dive in and is going to be interesting is quite recently Coinbase came out with their ability to basically have a price feed, and they're not explicitly putting it on chain, but what they're doing that's interesting is they're just signing the data, right? So now they have a public-private key, and then that they're signing the price and then making that available for the API. And then someone else can come along and basically pay the gas price to put that on chain. And so it's like kind of debated whether they're going to be a competitor to Chainlink at some time, or they're just trying to make their data available to people. But that is the recent news. And it makes you wonder if like more exchanges are going to do that and kind of get their hat in the ring in that way.
Yeah, and I guess my hot take on that topic is I think people initially had this idea that we kind of needed to decentralize everything. And people wanted to I guess, obtain sufficient decentralization in kind of everything that we did. And now as the ecosystem matures a little bit, and it's been a few years, I think people are almost becoming, I guess, more accepting of a little bit of centralization where it makes sense. And so I think in the early days, just saying, "Oh, we'll just trust Coinbase to feed us the Ether price," like people would be very against that. But honestly, in my mind, it feels like people might become more accepting of that. And I don't think we'll obviously just trust Coinbase as the like only Coinbase's price feed. I think most people will probably trust a few different centralized sources, but I think people are just like getting a little bit more comfortable with like not decentralizing everything. How do you guys feel about that, Joe?
Yeah, I think that's natural. I think you're right. It's like in the beginning, there was just a lot of us like purists, like, if it's not decentralized, then it's, it's bad. But I think it's sort of indicative of how the ecosystem's starting to mature and realize that like the world runs today in a very centralized way. Like we can't just disrupt the world, with only decentralization. Like we've got a decentralized protocol layer of Ethereum, and we've got decentralized, protocols built on Ethereum of the smart contracts. But we do need to. I do think that it's a good thing to see like people starting to trust like data from centralized sources that like you trust when you go on Coinbase and you do and people who do day trading, they're always like, people are trusting their exchanges, people are trusting their centralized platforms in their day-to-day lives in general. You're trusting PayPal, you're trusting Visa, you're trusting whoever that you're interacting with. So it like, I think escaping that purist mentality is probably a good thing for our ecosystem in general.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think, in addition to like being less purist, I honestly think the incentives have changed, right? Like in the beginning, there was not a strong incentive to get this off-chain data into the real world because there wasn't all these DeFi protocols. And now that these DeFi protocols are, the incentive is to race as quickly as possible to get as many users so you can charge like a percentage for each transaction. And so, somewhat of like the crypto bros have arrived and now have the strong incentives to get this off-chain data into the chain as quick as possible. Where before, like maybe even 9, 10, or 15 months ago, that wasn't such a strong incentive. And so I would just say, that has kind of emerged where that didn't exist before.
That's a really good point. Yeah, like as we've seen, if you want to do things quickly and easily, centralization oftentimes is the answer. And so now that there kind of is an incentive to do things quickly and easily, I think we'll see a lot more like where there are places where there's product market fit. I think we'll see kind of centralized solutions rise to fill the gap where we previously were just like hoping that some sort of decentralized products would emerge to fill that gap. Maybe. Cool.
And then hopefully eventually we can use like these on-chain protocols and the Uniswaps and the other version, in V2 and Kyber. So you don't need, all these different sources, and there's enough traffic on-chain. And then, yeah, the prices will be accurate to what actually people are trading in real time.
Yeah. Question for you, Kames.
Yes,
Hot
sir.
take.
Hot take.
If you were to build a DeFi protocol right now and you needed a price feed, what would you, given the fact that there's like multiple options now, what would you use as your price feed mechanism?
Good question. I think, this would ultimately come down to kind of understanding who my user base is. Like, because Coinbase has the most traffic and like the most trading volume that is like not wash trading and is like, pretty accurate because they do phenomenal KYC and they make sure, trading is legit. I would almost be at this point more inclined to go to their pricing mechanism and kind of put that into my DeFi application, and then maybe use Chainlink and others. But for me, it seems like they might be the most accurate price feed in terms of like real-time trading. So I think that would definitely be worthwhile to look at this point, especially now that they've made it available.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but like I would trend in that direction too. I honestly would probably, as much as I love decentralization, I would be inclined to trust Coinbase over Chainlink or another product. And I feel like for me, a big piece of it is being able to knock on somebody's door if something goes wrong. Like if the Coinbase price feed Oracle just gets messed up for some reason, I know where the Coinbase office is. It's like downtown in San Francisco. I'll like go yell at Coinbase, and there will probably be some sort of like legal ramifications if things get messed up. Whereas if you use one of these other like decentralized Oracle protocol things, it's like who do you yell at when things go terribly wrong, if they do go terribly wrong? So I don't know. Joe, you look like you got a comment on that one.
Yeah. So, I mean, as much as, so it sounds like what Coinbase is doing is just simply signing data that they're putting out with their private key.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't read a ton about it, but I don't know if like they're not going to be providing any kind of guarantees other than this data is what's going on. So like in events like happened maybe a year or so ago where that flash crash, I think that happened on GDAX or Coinbase Pro or whatever it was.
Coinbase Pros, if I remember correctly.
And that flash crash caused a lot of turmoil. I mean, just within the GDAX exchange in general. But now imagine that applied to DeFi. Is Coinbase liable not just for their own exchange, but are they also liable for all the dApps that relied on their data? That's sort of murky at best. So as much as like I do trust the the brick and mortarness of Coinbase as a business, like having somebody to answer questions and a face to put on to point blame at or whatever. I don't know how much of a sense of security that should give us like in general. Yeah.
So the good news is Coinbase thought of this ahead of time, and they actually wrote in their recent blog that if the price discrepancy changes too much, because I think they sign something every minute, and what they wanted to do is that if it changes, I believe 8% or some drastic amount within that minute, they won't sign that data. And so if you're trying to build that trusted thing, because they're like, we had a flash crash at some point, and if that happens again, our feed could totally do that. And so I think they thought about that a little bit, and they won't sign something if it drastically changes too much and someone games Coinbase Pro. Not to say somebody won't find some other way to do it, but they did put a little bit of like a gap stop there, so they wouldn't be putting out a flash crash again.
Yeah, I'm interested in learning more about that then, because like I'm thinking that, well, couldn't that work against them in the other direction? Crypto is super volatile. Prices are subject to change pretty sharply. What happens if they are failing to sign actual valid data, not just a one-off flash crash, like because their system is reading it as a flash crash or something? So that that's pretty interesting that they have like fail safes, potential fail safes built into it, and I don't know what those implications might be on like DeFi use cases and actual data.
And I think that's why decentralization is important. And like you can rely on multiple, even centralized sources to derive a sort of decentralized price feed. So Let's say Binance releases the same thing. We got Gemini, whatever. If there's a bunch of these things, you can just say, okay, I'll take like the median and like of all of these different centralized price feeds and derive my ultimate value of Ether through through calculating what the average of all of them are or something like that. I don't know. And I think like that, I think that's what Chainlink does. So you can have like multiple layers of decentralization. Like this decentralized layer of Chainlink feeds into this one Chainlink oracle, and then that one Chainlink oracle can be just one piece of the puzzle in this even more decentralized pool of oracles. And so you get like, it's almost like compounding levels of reliability and security. So yeah, if I was building a DApp, I would say don't trust any single price feed oracle. Trust multiple. I don't know. Were you say something,
So
Joe?
yeah, that sort of begs the question: do you think other exchanges, major exchanges, will start to do what Coinbase is doing and sign their price feeds as Oracle services? And if not, should they?
I think they should.
I think it would be great to have. I mean, obviously, more signed data is better. More verified, more data from a verified source is better than less. And I think that ultimately, Chainlink itself is, and I don't really know exactly the inner workings of Chainlink, but it starts in a centralized place, and and correct me if I'm misspeaking here, but from what I gather, it sort of aggregates centralized data and sends that to the exchange as a and that's how it's made decentralized. But it's basically an aggregator of price feeds, and if we basically that can be pretty well disrupted if we have signed price feeds from all the major exchanges, that like even that aggregation can be done in either an on-chain way or a more provably like data, like the data integrity is a lot better, I think. Is that
So yeah. So like we talk about the aggregation of like numerous different price feed oracles. Why do we think Coinbase didn't just like add their oracle to Chainlink? Like because there's like incentivization mechanisms to get people to provide their data in the Chainlink model. Like you're paid for basically providing. I think you're paid to like provide this data. So like if Coinbase wanted to monetize this, one, why wouldn't they do like just add that price feed to Chainlink? And then two, like, do we think that maybe the Chainlink model could like someone could implement the same thing, but only for like major trusted institutions where it's like same model Chainlink, but the only people that are allowed to participate in providing price feeds are like big trusted institutions who go through crazy due diligence or something like that.
So I just want to take a quick second to answer your first question, which was, why doesn't Coinbase just go to Chainlink right now themselves? I think because they are probably one of the most trusted brands currently within the cryptocurrency space. And if they start to pick favorites with coins and protocols, that over time could potentially hurt their reputation. And there's no guarantee that Chainlink will be the winner in a year and a half. And so if they attach their brand to Chainlink and Chainlink fails, well, then Coinbase fails. And I think for them, they're absolutely thinking about long-term brand, reputation, and like are probably playing it very, very cautiously, and probably knowing someone else is just going to take their data and then become a Chainlink provider anyways. So they can have that, degree of separation, and still be, eat their cake and have it too.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Interesting.
And then I forget your second question.
Any comments on that? Any comments on that?
Not for me.
Cool.
So what was your second question? It was like, are other exchanges going to do this?
That's what I was asking. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think should other exchanges start doing this, and what would that look like? How would that reshape how we look at oracles and price feed oracles, and specifically, obviously, and DeFi use cases?
I think the pressure is on now. I think if Coinbase does it, like other people are going to not want to miss out and have to hop on. Like the Winklevosses are going to be like, no, we got to follow this gravy train again and, get Gemini to come on. But
yeah, I think that would be a great thing to see. I mean, it's trivial to sign data that already exists not talking about getting it onto a blockchain or anything, but just signing with a key that you've already, shown that it's you own. So yeah, I think, like I said, more data can only be more helpful. You don't have to use it, but having it is a great thing. So I would love to see other major exchanges start doing this. That way you can start to write, like Coinbase doesn't need to write the fail safes into it. What happens if it changes by this percentage over a period of 8 minutes or whatever you said? Like, I think then it'll be caught, because if it's a true, black swan event, not just I guess I'm sort of using that wrong. If it's a true event and not just a flash crash, weird, one off, then all the other exchanges will reflect the same thing. And I think that should be accurately reflected through DeFi use cases on chain too.
I think you brought up a really good point. And it's like, we should make as much data available as possible, and we don't have to use it all. Like, but there's no harm in having kind of more data to choose from when you're devising your, not even just DeFi protocol, but just like on-chain protocol in general.
We're talking to you, Tyler and Cameron. I know they're listening.
Dude, they're our biggest fans, and probably the only 2 people. Those must be like the 2 views that we have on our videos.
Yep. One from each of them.
This is a interesting topic though, that I'd love to explore further, and it's exchanges implementing some sort of functionality and then forcing the other exchanges to follow suit. So I know in the beginning, like I was talking to some Coinbase people, and they're like, we would never add Ethereum Classic, or we would never add these shit coins. And then other major exchanges added those coins to their platform. They started making tons of money because people wanted to trade them. And then lo and behold, Coinbase goes and adds those coins to their platform to make more money. So like, I feel like when you add these functionalities, you're opening Pandora's box. It's like, okay, Coinbase did this price feed oracle. Now everyone's going to do price feed oracle. And I feel like that can be good and bad. And so I don't know. Or do you feel differently, Joe? You're shaking your head.
Like the inner capitalist in me was raging when I heard you say that. I think, I mean, what you're talking about is the beauty of competition and markets and innovation. And I think, that when one competitor, like when one exchange starts making a lot of money because they're the only one selling a hot coin that everybody is trading, other exchanges are like, whoa, what are we doing? Why aren't we getting in on that action? I think that's a good thing that increases for us as consumers of these products and services, that gives us more options, more personal choices, and ultimately more freedom to decide how we want to, interact with their system.
It gives us more freedom, but at the same time, like, I think maybe sometimes that freedom is bad for people who aren't as informed. I know you're gonna hate this because this isn't like a free market approach, but let's say I'm Joe Schmo who knows nothing about crypto, and I just hear about Coinbase, and I go to Coinbase. I'm like, oh, they're listing these assets, so these assets must be like the trustworthy and reliable ones. And if you just like add every token to Coinbase, people are gonna just throw their money away on shitcoins. And sure, you can argue like that's on them, they should do their research, but a lot of people aren't. And you kind of need these disseminators of information, these people who are going to like separate the signal from the noise for you and say, hey, here's the things you should trust. And I originally viewed Coinbase as one of those platforms. It was like anything added to Coinbase, like pretty good product. And they've been forced to somewhat deviate from that path. Like it was just Bitcoin, and it like took them a really long time to add Ether. And that was like a big deal that they added Ether. And then like it was all downhill from there. And so like they are no longer this like source of trusted assets. Now it's just like another exchange. And so yeah, maybe that's just like not their business model anymore, or
Yeah,
it's just not like a, yeah.
I will disagree. I'm happy to disagree with that hot take. I don't think that it's Coinbase's role to be that trusted source of information. I mean, that was on us treating them as that. I mean, I remember that too. I remember, yeah, it was just. I'm pretty sure for a while it was just Bitcoin, and first it was Bitcoin, then it was Ethereum and Litecoin were added at almost similar times. I forget what came next, but yeah, I mean, I think it's, a little bit buyer beware. I mean, it's the crypto space still isn't perfectly safe. I mean, it's gotten safer it's gotten easier on ramps, but I still think that, and we all have our opinions on what is a shit coin, what is a good coin, and I don't think that it's up to exchanges to be the sort of arbiters of that. I think that like, yeah, if you should do your research and figure out what are the good coins somewhere else, but the exchanges are just all about offering, if you want to buy, something crazy, you should have the freedom to do that. But yeah, I do definitely see where you were coming from though. And I did appreciate that about Coinbase early on, and that, a lot of people were coming into the crypto ecosystem through Coinbase, and they weren't really led astray by buying, the top,
Exactly
3 or 5 cryptos on CoinMarketCap.
And who is better to be that arbiter than the exchanges? Like, who would provide that service?
Well, and this sort of feels like the whole argument, or like a different but similar, like an analogous argument to like Twitter and YouTube and social media. And are they social media platforms, or
Oh
are
man, I
they?
know where you're going with this.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, you get to dicey political territory here, but like where they're censoring their content, are they curators of their of their social media site, or are they just platforms for, open canvas essentially? Like, so, and I think like it's similar.
I see where you're going with that, but like also I feel like it's not similar. That's my hot take. Because like those are just like platforms that it's just like, hey, the whole purpose of the platform is you come, you create an account, you say whatever you want. Like that's the platform. Whereas Coinbase is like, here are specific things that you can do, and we enable you to do these specific things, and you're limited to doing those. It's not like open ended. It's not like a blank canvas for you to do whatever you want like these other platforms. Coinbase is like, you buy the crypto that we add to the platform. That's
I guess I'm saying that it's like at a philosophical layer analogous to that struggle of it's a big internet service company deciding their philosophy on are we just an exchange that facilitates people getting stuff, or are we having opinions about the stuff and how and that they're getting and stuff. And that's just, so that's why the only way I was saying it was similar to that argument is now Facebook and YouTube and whoever, like Twitter, are injecting their own bias, like everyone's biased, their own biased opinions on what is going on their platforms rather than just letting it be. So that's why I was saying it was similar.
No, I mean it. Yeah, totally makes sense, and it is a similar philosophical debate. And I'm just debating that, man, I don't know what I'm debating, but I just feel like Coinbase, you had something good going. I know you're probably making more money now, but it could, in my mind, I'm viewing it from like an ecosystem adoption point of view. And let's say a bunch of people come in this new bull run and they see all these new coins on Coinbase, and they buy all these shit coins, and those shit coins eventually go to zero. And now all these people lose all this money on crypto again, and they're like, oh, second time I lost all my money. I'm out of crypto forever. It just sets us back. Whereas like if they were kind of restricted to, to only making reasonable choices, which I mean, yeah, like it's on it's on them, and who's to say what's reasonable and what isn't? Nobody knows at this point, but like we kind of know. But I don't know.
Well, your argument made all the points that mine was going to make. My counter argument, so kind of came full circle there.
Caves, how you feel
So
about all this?
before we get too sidetracked and we lose the attention of our audience, we should probably go back a little bit to the main topic of just price oracles and just like how this data intends to be used, and should, I think we can solve this once and for all. So I have a question: is the long term, do you think off-chain people will be the arbiters of data, or will protocols like Uniswap and a few others essentially then just become the price oracles? And we actually don't need these centralized exchanges to be price feeds, because trading will just occur on chain or maybe in optimistic rollups. Yeah. Do you think it's going to happen where data comes on chain? And if so, how long before that happens?
I think everything will be on chain, but it's going to take a while. I think as like DeFi has a lot more liquidity and it like becomes this blossoming ecosystem, I think you're going to see an extreme migration away from even just decentralized exchanges in general, except as fiat on-ramps. And maybe someone will create some cool inventive fiat on-ramp in some other way. But like, I think basically centralized exchanges will be limited to being these fiat on-ramps, and then all other activity will happen on-chain. Because I don't know, I find myself really wanting to use DEXs. It's just like the liquidity is not there if I'm trying to make big trades. And so I just really can't right now. But as that liquidity increases, I think it's totally going to change.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a lot of I don't want to say ifs, but there's a lot of prerequisites that need to happen I think, just to allow this chain to scale, to have the kind of liquidity, or to have the kind of low transaction fees that could allow for the kind of liquidity to allow that volume of trading to occur, that we could actually get like actionable price data on decentralized exchanges. But I think like it's absolutely it's a possibility, for sure. It's just we need to keep marching our way forward as an Ethereum ecosystem.
Yeah, you're right. Like, and that's why I said I think it's going to take a while, and that's one of the reasons it's probably going to take a while. It's not even just an adoption; it's a technical thing. We like need way better scalability and solutions to a lot of these hard problems that we're facing before we get anywhere close to considering being like totally on chain for a lot of this stuff.
ETH 2.0, let's get there.
Optimistic rollups.
Woohoo!
Loopring.
Nice. Did I use Loopring? I want to test out their API. I'm pumped about that. But they do need more liquidity. I'm with you on that one. Like, I found a price arbitraging like opportunity by $8, but they just didn't have the liquidity I wanted. Total bummer. But yeah, it happens. So before we start to wind down this podcast, because I think we're pushing about like the 30-minute, 40-minute mark almost. Is there any final topics that we should kind of like tell people to investigate themselves, or a little more information, or any final hot takes that we want to say about price oracles? Or even we can make a prediction about the prediction market, because Augur version 2 is rolling out pretty soon. And the criticism was that not enough people used Augur version 1 for how many tokens people bought. And will version Augur 2 fix that problem, or will it suffer the same fate of Augur 1?
Great question. Great topic.
That's a whole new podcast, I think.
Well, we'll just do predictions, and then we can come back to talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, let me just apologize to our massive audience. Sorry we didn't get around to meta transactions. We'll get around to that tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
But I think because Joe will be on tomorrow. I like.
Definitely.
So, dude, Augur version 1 kind of sucked. I couldn't get it to
Hot
work
take,
on my
baby. Hot
computer.
take.
Super hot take. Like, I bought rep in the pre-sale. I'm a big Augur fan. I love Augur, but like, and Augur version 1 was like, honestly, it was better than I expected, but it also kind of sucked. And so I think if you can have what kind of Augur is aiming for, but have like a good user experience around it, it's going to be, I think it has huge potential. Just, you can bet on anything, markets for anything. It's honestly revolutionary, and it's going to change a lot of stuff. And it's in my mind, it's just like a user experience question at this point.
Yeah, I think Augur.
Joe, it only spicy hot takes, man. You got to come out with that good
Yeah.
stuff.
I only
Give us that.
eat spice.
Love it. Go ahead. Sorry,
So,
didn't mean to
Trump-
interrupt.
Does Trump love Augur version 2?
Not that spicy. Whoa, calm
Yeah,
down,
but-
Billy. Calm down.
Maybe we'll see him tweet about it soon. But anyway, I think Augur version 1 was I kind of a fail because it was so ambitious at such an early time in the early stages of just this Ethereum ecosystem and blockchain ecosystem in general. I don't think that there was too many prerequisites in terms of your understanding and your technical ability to start to get involved and start understanding how the platform was working. The user experience really was rough. And that's not just an Augur problem. That's a lot of dApps have, very similar problems that Augur had, in that, you're trying to do things with users signing transactions and setting things on chain and deploying contracts even for prediction markets. And it was all just, it was just a lot. And I honestly have no idea what Augur V2 is. I have not kept up to date on it at all. So I hope that the ecosystem's in a better position to receive it. I hope there's a larger audience of people ready and who already have the wallets, who are ready to interact with dApps. And I guess we'll kind of see. Hopefully their user experience has been smoothed out. And yeah, I guess that wasn't that spicy, but
yeah, spicy enough.
Spicy enough.
What do you think about like
Sizzling. Ouch.
Damn. Oh,
Where did that come from? Where'd that spice come from?
dude. What do you think about then? I'm not changing topics completely, but like,
Oh, you're changing topics completely.
no, like Augur rep. So I haven't used any of my rep because I don't know what to do with it. Like I can figure it out, but there's like so much friction involved with using some of these tokens. It's like, for the amount of money that I'm going to make by like being the arbiter on markets with my rep, it's just like not worth my time. But I would love to do it if it was kind of frictionless. Do you know if Augur version 2 kind of reduces the necessary friction of utilizing your rep to be like an arbiter in these markets or something at all?
All right, well, because I'm a pro and I watch every application ever on Ethereum. No, just kidding. I don't do that. No, I actually don't have. I don't have the answer to that, but I do hope they do allow you to delegate your votes. And I imagine they've thought about that, because if they're smart at all, they've definitely allowed some. You can, or someone will build something that allows you just to approve your rep for like somebody else, and then just there'll be rep whales who are like, "Yo, dog, I'll give you a small percentage." But yeah, truth be told, I think, yeah, it doesn't look too good for rep in my mind, because the benefits